All right, so I'd like to welcome everyone to session 10 of our 11 Sterling Core Values Leadership Series briefings. My name is Laura McNeil. I am a Sterling Master Examiner. Just to remind everybody, each of our 11 sessions in the series is designed to highlight one of the Sterling Core Values in a 7-minute leadership brief that is followed by a Q&A session. Core values define and drive what matters for an organization. A core value is a basic behavioral element that is leveraged as we go about our daily work and make daily decisions. They are the practices that we use or that we should be using every day in everything that we do. Today's core value is organizational learning, featuring Sterling Master Examiner Nicole Solomon. Nicole is the Regional Program Manager, Office of Economic Self-Sufficiency with the Department of Children and Families. And before I turn it over to Nicole for her leadership brief, I just again want to remind everybody to please submit your questions through chat so we can tee them up for our Q&A discussion after Nicole's briefing. So at this time, Nicole, you ready to take it away?
I sure am. Can you hear me well, Laura?
I can.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much and welcome everybody to today's core value session on organizational learning. So you'll see here, organizational learning highlighted in yellow is positioned on this graphic with the process category of workforce, and it actually sits between two of our other core values, agility and resilience, and valuing people. So as we'll learn today, our approaches to organizational learning influences how we build a culture of learning, or what I like to call a yearning to learn, and how that culture of learning results in enhanced value to our customers and yields positive performance results for our organizations. So what is organizational learning? And actually what I want to focus in on is what differentiates it from individual learning. So individual learning, that kind of includes things like pre-service training or in-service training or refresher trainings or certifications, credentialing training. Individual learning is critical because it provides our individual team members with the skills they need to be effective or gain a mastery in their jobs. Organizational learning, though, on the other hand, it can be defined as the process of creating, transferring, and retaining knowledge. So how is your organization set up? How is it set up to continuously be reviewing existing approaches? How is it set up to adopt best practices? And how is it set up to affect significant change, which could lead to innovation? You'll see the cartoon there where we're learning over and over again. We've got a department of lessons learned, a department of lessons learned, and another department of lessons learned. Here's a great quote by Jack Welch. So why is organizational learning so important? Jack Welch says, an organization's ability to learn and to translate that learning into action rapidly is the ultimate competitive advantage. So role model organizations, and that's what we all want to be, role model organizations understand the criticality of embedding learning practices into their system. So organizations that have formal and systematic approaches to creating new knowledge, transferring that knowledge, and retaining knowledge have an edge over their competitors. Organizational knowledge actually lives in category 4 of the Sterling Baldrige framework. And 3 primary criteria questions are listed here. So for those of you in organizations that are interested in a starting point to building that culture of learning, a yearning to learn, begin with these 3 questions. How do you build and manage organizational knowledge? How do you share your best practices in your organization? And how do you use your knowledge and resources to embed learning in the way that your organization operates? Now, here's a few strategies to embed learning in the way that your organization operates. You want to make learning a regular part of daily work, that yearning to learn, that culture of learning. You want to solve problems by digging into the source of the problem. So really digging into the root cause analysis of why the problem exists. You want to focus on building and sharing knowledge throughout the organization and be driven by opportunities to affect significant, meaningful change and to build systems that stimulate creativity and innovation. Now, where does this start? It starts with visionary leadership, and we actually had a session on visionary leadership. It's our first session for core values. Visionary leadership is needed to create a culture where organizational learning can be embedded in the way that it operates. Senior leaders create that culture where continuous improvement is not only expected, but recognized, it's rewarded. A culture where the soil is set for learning to occur in a safe environment. Now, creating new knowledge, it can come from multiple inputs, and that includes employee and customer ideas, research and development, the sharing, of course, of best practices across teams and units. Well, what about reviewing your competitors' performance and benchmarking? So benchmarking, if you're not familiar with that term, it's the process of measuring key business metrics and practices and comparing them. So that could come from within business areas, other business areas, or against competitors or industry peers. Organizations can also learn from tapping in to and learning from their ecosystem, their business ecosystem. And what I mean by that is that network of organizations, and that could include your partners, your collaborators, your suppliers, your vendors, your stakeholders. You can also learn from that ecosystem of partners. So I'd like to focus quickly on 3 examples of organizational learning from my organization. So, and my organization is the Florida Department of Children and Families. So the first example I'll highlight is around best practice sharing. So we have in my program performance management team meetings, and they provide administrative units the opportunity to report out on their KPIs. Now, the data is visualized in a way that cascades from the administrative unit to the units to the individual team members of those units. And during those meetings, top performers are identified, and they are asked to actually share their practices. And those best practices are shared, recorded, and even expanded and shared throughout the other administrative units in our region. The second example highlights benchmarking. So I'm actually working on a work group right now, and that team's been charged with reviewing the salaries of our team members with the goal of identifying incentives or compensation elements to mitigate some compensation issues we're facing in our frontline positions. So the work group conducted a market analysis and benchmarked equivalent positions in peer organizations and in different industries. This exercise has provided us with the information needed, the new knowledge needed to make relevant recommendations to our senior leaders to affect meaningful change related to one of our major strategic challenges, which is compensation issues. And the final example is a really special one to me that I've recently learned about. And this highlights how my organization correlated data from multiple sources to build new knowledge. So in this example, multiple sets of data were used, and data including photos, audio, video, to track the locations of victims of human trafficking. So working in conjunction with multiple partners, the department was able to use images of inside and outside of major hotel chains and cross-reference those images with the images taken of human trafficking victims in hotels to determine potential locations of those victims and or the regular locations where traffickers were housing their victims. So that last example certainly demonstrates how creating new knowledge improves effectiveness and enhances value to the customers that yields positive and impactful results. And in addition to enhancing value for customers, Organizational learning can also result in the items bulleted here: the development of new business opportunities, the development of new and improved processes or business models, a reduction in errors or defects, increased productivity, enhanced performance in making societal contributions, and greater agility in managing change and disruption. So to kind of cap us off here, new knowledge, new information is an invitation for us to question old ways and old opinions. The faster our organizations can recognize mistakes, fold in new knowledge, the more competitive we become, the more value we create for our workforce, the more value we create for our customers, and certainly the more value we create for our bottom line and our mission and visions. So I'd like to thank all of you for listening in and participating. I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And Laura, I'll go ahead and hand it back over to you.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Nicole. Boy, that example you gave on human trafficking was so eye-opening. Amazing. All right, so I did write down some summary notes. Let me see if I got it all right. I loved your yearning to learn. So of course, my first bullet is on yearning to learn. Organizational learning is otherwise referred to as promoting the culture of yearning to learn. Organizational learning is systematic and a part of an organizational ecosystem, which can be evidenced in the organization's go-to approach they use for solving problems. Organizational learning is capable of influencing the organization's speed in adopting and managing change. And I loved your quote from Jack Welch. That was great. Organizational learning is not individual learning. It is the creation, transfer, and retention of knowledge about how an organization operates. A culture of organizational learning is created by leaders through role modeling and recognition. And then lastly, I have something that I think leaders can ask themselves, jotted down. How does my organization's culture naturally promote creativity that drives that quick adoption of best practices and innovation? So I wrote that down for myself as a leader, that I can ask myself, am I promoting the right organizational culture in my own team that naturally promotes that creativity? So I am going to move right on because we're coming up on time. We do have a question in chat, Nicole. Hopefully my summary notes are good, but you and I can, connect on those. I think I got it all. All right. You did, Laura. Okay, cool. What is your opinion on getting every employee to identify one thing that they've learned, could be a knowledge, a skill, a behavior, each day, and report on how many things that they have learned? Would that help achieve like a yearning to learn community? And by the way, reporting could be quarterly.
Oh, I actually like that idea a lot. I think, a big part of organizational learning, if you remember, I said something about leaders creating that culture, and Laura mentioned it too, that soil where learning, questioning, and providing input is just a part of who you are as a business, who you are as an organization, and it's a safe place to do so. So offering the opportunity for team members at whatever level to share their learnings, what they've learned, I think is a great place to start. Now, what that would look like logistically, administratively, may be something that you would want to consider, how you would want to pull all that information together. I always say, if you ask people for things, they're going to expect you to do something with it, right? So if you're going to ask for their opinions, if you're going to ask for them to write something down and share it, they certainly may be waiting for you as a management team, as a leadership team, to take that information, roll it up, and find a way to systematically use it. So before you do something, you may want to think it through. Be very deliberate about how you're going to use the information you're gathering from your team members.
Awesome. I love that deliberate, really deliberate, kind of creates that cadence and drives that behavioral repeatability. I love that. So one more question in chat. What are some of the most effective ways of retaining organizational knowledge beyond retention of team members? And I love this question.
It's a great question. The first thing that comes to mind is, documentation of practices and utilizing platforms to house that documentation, right? So whether you are utilizing, SharePoint or shared drives or something like that, we face this more often than we probably would like to admit, where we've got someone who's got so much institutional knowledge, but it's in their heads. It's not written down anywhere. So you certainly want to be able to capitalize off of those individuals who have and house all that institutional knowledge in their heads and start the process of documenting, writing down, being very formal with it, and housing it in a place where it's available to those individuals that need it. I also want you to consider succession planning processes. We've actually gone through that in my organization most recently, not just for promotional opportunities, but also for individuals that are on their road to retirement. We've been working on an individual who has such a unique role in my organization. And for the last year, we've been talking about what are we going to do to be prepared for when she retires. And over the last couple of months, she's retiring in about 6 months or so. Over the last couple of months, we gathered the names of individuals who were interested in learning more about her role, and we formalized a succession planning process for them. So just a couple things to think about, writing everything down and housing it, but also considering, how you can share that information with individuals while they're still here and kind of build a pipeline.
Yeah, I love that, Nicole. Really creating kind of like a knowledge center or baking it into your process control manuals, PCMs, or whatever they might be. Really sharing and organizational knowledge shouldn't be resident within one person. That's almost like a single point of failure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great feedback, great feedback. Well, thank you so much, Nicole, for your time.